Du bist so wunderbar.
Cheeky, grimy and plenty loud, Berlin is just the place for many of Germany's biggest bands. But it's not just locals who have made music history here. Legends like Iggy Pop, David Bowie, Depeche Mode and U2 produced some of their greatest tracks and albums in the city once known for its wall. Berlin's turbulent history has inspired many a band.
Berlin is like someone who walks into the bar with a scar and you think, that person has really lived through a lot.
Du klingst so geil, Berlin.
That's so Berlin, kind of in your face, but we mean it lovingly.
Berlin is a cultural melting pot, and it's that multiculturalism that has shaped the city and its sound.
So many different people, different cultures, different neighborhoods. And I think we bring a certain element of punk.
From punk and rock to rap and techno, we find out why there are so many songs about Berlin.
It's the last bastion of free thinking, Berlin, and the way the city kind of moves, it's really relaxed.
Here are 5 iconic songs that were written in or about the German capital. First up, Koffer in Berlin, or I Still Have a Suitcase in Berlin by Marlene Dietrich.
Die Seligkeiten, vergangene Zeiten.
Dietrich released the song in 1955 after many years living abroad in the United States.
It's almost a saying or proverb by now, but I also have a kind of longing for Berlin. I have to go back at least once a year. Koffer in Berlin is an absolute classic.
Marlene Dietrich was born in Berlin in 1901. She started her career as a model. She became a star playing Lola Lola in The Blue Angel and moved to Hollywood in 1933. She became somewhat of a style icon, was openly bisexual and distanced herself from Nazi Germany.
Der Berliner Flughafen war dieser Tage Schauplatz eines rührenden Wiedersehens. Nach 30-jähriger Abwesenheit kehrte Marlene Dietrich zu einem Gastspiel in ihre alte Heimat zurück. Vom Publikum ihrer jungen Jahre überschwänglich begrüßt, zeigte sich der ewig jugendliche blaue Engel von Kopf bis Fuß auf Publicity eingestellt.
But some saw her as a traitor. The star holds a special place in the heart of Berlin drag queen Gabi Tupper. Gabi regularly dons a blonde wig and top hat to play the diva. Part of the repertoire is the song Koffer in Berlin.
At that time, Berlin was the European city to go to. But there was also this feeling that it's impossible to really live in Berlin. You'd rather just have a suitcase there, visit occasionally, look at the nice things. Because, let's face it, anyone who's lived in Berlin for a while knows it can really eat you up.
The Deutsche Kinemathek at Berlin's Potsdamer Platz houses some of Marlene Dietrich's legacy. The vast collection includes over 3,000 items of clothing, including Dietrich's original and legendary suitcases.
It's said that she always traveled with about 60 suitcases. Her own were marked with her initials, and they were rolled. They were heavy as hell. These are hat cases from the 50s and 60s, and you can see where she's been by the hotel stickers. Her suitcases actually still travel. They can be seen at various exhibitions. Every Marlene Dietrich exhibit features some kind of luggage.
Her story is taking the stage once again at Theater Lindenhof in the Swabian Alb. Hannah Stör is directing a play about the film diva. It's titled Marlene in Hollywood.
I'm telling the story of how Marlene always stayed German, stayed Prussian, stayed a Berliner, and how her heart stayed in the right place, as they say in Berlin. A kind of bridge for Germany to reintegrate into a community of shared values. Because through the life of Marlene Dietrich, the world saw that there was another Germany besides Nazis.
Back in Berlin, Gabi Tuppe keeps the legacy of the queer icon alive with one of her most famous songs.
Ich hab noch einen Koffer in Berlin. Der bleibt auch dort und das hat seinen Sinn. Auf diese Weise lohnt sich die Reise. Denn wenn ich Sehnsucht hab, dann fahr ich wieder hin.
The second song on our list is a smash hit composed in Berlin, Heroes by David Bowie. Berlin in the late 70s. It was a divided city. David Bowie was living in West Berlin, where he wrote arguably one of his best songs in the shadow of the Berlin Wall. Heroes, an anthem that played an essential role for Berlin's music scene.
Heroes von David Bowie is...
Bowie's Heroes is certainly the most unique song I know concerning Berlin. It's relevant because he lived in Berlin for some time. It was written here, and he really helped shape the music scene here.
The song and artist had a particular attitude, which is what Berlin is all about.
The musical history, the identity of the city started with David Bowie coming making Low here. Up until then, Berlin wasn't known as a musical city, so he put Berlin on the musical map.
It gives me goosebumps every time.
When David Bowie arrived in Berlin, he was already a superstar. He made the move in search of anonymity and to overcome his cocaine addiction. Bowie recorded the song in the legendary Hansa Studios Great Hall in the summer of 1977, together with producer Tony Visconti and sound engineer Eduard Meyer, who remembers the time fondly.
I enjoyed working with him. The song was created in the studio. Bowie had asked Tony Visconti and Antonia Mas, who were both part of the production, to leave him alone for an hour or two. So the two of them went out for a walk to the wall, and Bowie gazed out and saw the couple walking along holding each other tight. That's what inspired the lyrics.
Bowie lived here at Hauptstrasse 155 in the Schöneberg district.
It really became a home for me, Berlin, at that time. It was a good place to be. I enjoyed it because there seemed to be such a lot happening in Berlin at the time.
Fans flock to Berlin to see the legendary Hansa Studios to this day. Thilo Schmid gives guided tours of the rooms that are steeped in music history.
Bowie and others were inspired by the brokenness of the city, the special location of the studios, the big hall right by the wall, etc.
The studios still house many of the original instruments used in the recording of David Bowie's album Heroes.
Heroes is a very special song for a lot of people because it radiates hope. That's definitely present in the song. You can apply that to today, to wars, to our current crises.
We will be heroes just for one day.
The song is also known from the film Christiane F., based on the book of the same name. The movie portrays the life of 13-year-old Christiane F., a great David Bowie fan, who first tries heroin after attending one of his concerts. By 14, she's addicted to drugs and working as a prostitute. The film's entire soundtrack is made up of Bowie tunes. The musician even agreed to appear in the film.
What I find so disturbing is how many people say they started using drugs because of the film, or maybe the music. But that's the opposite of what they really wanted to show. They wanted to show how dark and violent that life is. I mean, there's an overdose and her boyfriend dies.
Heroes helped Christiane F., directed by Uli Edel, achieve cult status. It also played a key role in attracting musicians from all over the world to Berlin. Case in point, U2, creators of our next legendary song, One.
Or do you feel the same?
November 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall. For the people of East Berlin and East Germany, the dream of freedom was finally coming true. Families were reunited, a whole country was overjoyed. In October of 1990, U2 was at Hansa Studios working on their 7th album, Achtung Baby. The album represented a major shift for the band, just like the major events taking place in reunified Germany.
Everyone can agree to love at least one song. You have at least one song that you think is great. And I think for a lot of people that song is One.
Achtung Baby is one of their finest moments, in my opinion. And One is like, that is, for me, that's probably the best song they ever wrote.
Could the band have written a song like this without experiencing Berlin? The first video of One, shot in the Great Hall and on the streets of Berlin, gives an idea of how strongly the band was influenced by the historic moment that was the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Will it make it easier on you?
U2 just found themselves in this new situation that was the new Berlin, which still had very few rules. It was the start of the techno and electronic music scene, and Achtung Baby turned out to be a very electronic album.
U2 in drag. This performance got the band into a fair amount of trouble. Though well-intentioned, with proceeds from the song going to support AIDS research, the gay community felt it fed into the stereotype that AIDS is exclusively a disease of gay men. The video by Anton Cobain was not well received.
I've been positive for over 10 years. I've also lost friends to AIDS. Bono may be a totally great ally and supporter, but he's just not one of us. I think that's what bothered the gay community and me to this day.
The third and final video for the song was shot in a bar in New York and shows Bono in a kind of dialogue with himself. It's now considered the official video of One and has around 150 million views on YouTube.
Bono actually still drops by every now and then. He was here in the studios, in the hall too, just a few weeks or months ago. The connection is still there.
In 2009, during the 20th anniversary of the fall of the wall, U2 performed at the Brandenburg Gate. And in 2017, Bono and The Edge gave a surprise concert in the Berlin subway. On the U2 line, of course. Where else? Next on our list of Berlin songs, a German song by a real Berlin band, Dickes B by Seed. The song was released in 2001, when Berlin had become more unified and life in the capital felt more casual. During this time, 11 young men, mostly from West Berlin, got together to produce a whole new sound. Dickes B, or Big Fat B, is a tribute to Berlin, referencing specific locations as well as Berlin's vibrant culture and mix of people.
Dickes B by Seed was, I think, the first moment in the history of music coming out of Berlin where you just knew right away, this is going to be magic. This is going to be big.
Yeah, that's us. Dickes B, Big Fat B. We're kind of wild and we think we're pretty hot. If you think that's overconfident and cheeky, then you don't get Berlin humour.
A song that's a monument to my city. See Dickes B gets a big thumbs up from me.
Dicken Daumen von mir.
The song celebrates Berlin with all of its rough edges. The video was directed by Berlin-based Daniel Harder, who has now shot 10 videos for the band.
So we have a song about Berlin. We have these hip, good-looking guys. And I thought, let's just walk all around these locations with them. I definitely wanted to show some distinctive Berlin areas and sights, and always be on the move. To me, that's the vibe of the song.
11 men hit the town from the Oberbaum Bridge to Museum Island. The song, just like the band, represents diversity. It mixes dancehall, reggae, hip-hop and ska, a completely new and unique sound for the German capital.
It was definitely a breakthrough for the band. The music video was really important too. It put the band on the map, gave them exposure, and the song is still great. Even now, it really gets the crowd going.
Whether it's at the Lollapalooza Festival or other concerts, Seed is one of Germany's most successful live acts and regularly sells out shows. Dickes B is one of their biggest hits.
When you live in a city like this, you really feel what's going on. And it's not all sunshine, it's a tough city. And it's definitely getting tougher.
Now to our fifth song, or rather track, which is known worldwide as a Berlin anthem, Sky and Sand by DJ Paul Kalkbrenner. It was released in 2008. Events like the Love Parade and clubs like Berghain had shaped Berlin's image as a party city. This is where Paul Kalkbrenner grew up and got involved in the scene. Now 46, he's one of Berlin's most successful DJs and music producers.
It evokes many memories of summer, sunshine, the outdoors.
You know, the track is kind of, it's a club track, but in a kind of wrapped in a pop song, or a pop song wrapped in a club track.
Paul Kalkbrenner's Sky and Sand is also well known as the soundtrack for the film Berlin Calling, a film about a DJ in the Berlin nightlife. Hannes Stör was the director.
In the 90s and the 2000s, this was our attitude to life. Life in a city that was constantly in flux, an anarchic city. This attitude towards life, this vibrant Berlin, this city coming together, that's what I wanted to show.
Kalkbrenner plays Icarus in the film, a not yet successful DJ who uses a lot of drugs, cheats on his girlfriend and has a breakdown. Paul was actually only meant to write the soundtrack and advise the director.
I was actually just a consultant. He wanted to know how a guy like this lives, what he does all day. Does he do anything at all? Then he said, you should play him yourself.
Kalkbrenner's debut as an actor helped the film gain international success and gain a cult following, as did the track Sky and Sand, which only ended up in the film by chance.
Sky and Sand was not supposed to be in the film. Paul Kalkbrenner gave me a USB stick, and on it were the tracks he had produced that we'd talked about. But there was one track we hadn't talked about. It had vocals. I listened to it and thought, this is actually really interesting. Then I said, why don't we do the Bar 25 scene with Sky and Sand?
The vocals on the track are by Paul's brother Fritz, but in the film, Paul plays Icarus singing and dancing to the poppy track in the legendary club Bar 25.
What's always bugged me is that, except for documentaries, I've never, not once, seen an authentic dance scene in a film where people are just raving in a club. And that was super important to us. Those aren't film sets. We just shot real parties.
Bar 25 closed in 2010, but its legacy lives on. Today, an artist village is located there, which was officially opened as a cooperative in 2017. So what is the Berlin sound of today? Is there one sound that defines the city? What does the music industry think?
Berlin represents so many things. It definitely stands for electronic music and techno, but also rock and roll, punk, rap. Anyone who wants to combine all of that into one genre simply can't.
And what musical legacy will Hansa Studios leave behind?
Without Hansa Studios, I think Berlin wouldn't have had the same impact on music history, or even the music scene today.
There was a time when the city sound was rough and edgy. The musician and former bar owner Klaus Frank experienced this himself in the 70s and 80s and wrote a book about it.
Earlier on, the sound of Berlin was definitely dirty. It was sometimes cruel and sometimes really funny. I think today it's geared much more towards commercial success, towards sales. Us little punks back then, we put out a record and didn't care about anything else. We didn't even care if anybody bought it or not.
So what does the future hold? Will Berlin still be a place where musicians can afford to live and express their creativity?
The euphoria and freedom that basically anyone can do anything here, that's slowly being lost, because just finding a place to live is impossible.
And some of the songs are about how lonely it can be in such a big city. There's just so much storytelling that comes with living here.
The old Berlin where anything was possible, no matter how crazy, is probably no more. But a new Berlin may instead be emerging somewhere else entirely.
The new Berlin is happening elsewhere, eastwards, right? Because what happens there is a replication of what Berlin was initially after the Second World War. And if they play their cards right, they will be able to create something very interesting. We're talking about some place like Bakhmut or something like this, you know.
Really? Will the new Berlin be in Ukraine? What do you think? And what's your favourite song about Berlin? How do you think the scene has changed there? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to keep rocking and raving for a free world.